Everybody, welcome to Built Local. Today, I'm super excited. We got Greg Head here from Head Heating and Air Conditioning. Real excited to be sitting down to talk to him. He's been around, been doing a lot in the community and in the business side of things. So, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
Tell me, I know a little bit about Head because as we were talking right before we hit record, that I was going through my notes and I realized you guys fixed my AC in this room. So,
Yes,
so great job. But tell me about how the company started and
Actually, I didn't find this out until later. My aunt had told me my grandfather was down in Savannah, and he actually had his own little mobile heating and air conditioning company. And I didn't find that out until years after I had been in business. And she found a stationery, right? I said, "Oh, man, that's pretty cool." And anyway, she had framed that and sent it to me in my office now that I have now. And I got it hanging up behind my desk, behind my chair rather, on my wall. So that's pretty interesting, which I didn't find that out until later.
That is cool.
But how I got into this business is really all because of a woman. That's about it.
That's how it always goes, right?
Yeah. Well, at the time I was, I exited high school. I graduated from high school, and my wife, my girlfriend then, I did marry her, from 10th and 11th grade rather. And so I kept her around long enough to train her, and make sure we had, everything was right. No. But she kind of gave me a motivation. So I was working at a tire store and I was doing odd and end jobs, different things. And she was in college. And so she finally told me, said, "If you want to be with me, you got to go do something." I said, "Oh man." So I'm sitting there thinking, I was like, I'm just happy and content working at the tire store and making a little bit of money here, saving my money and go buy this and do this and, save up for a ring, I'm going to get this done. But she had said that to me and I said, "Oh man." So I was thinking to myself, what, I wasn't an A student and I wasn't a B student. I was a C student by graduation. And I said, well, let me figure out what's the easiest path I can take. That young man mindset, right? So I went up there to Macon Tech actually, which is Central Georgia Technical College now, and I just drove there. Which growing up, I didn't have a lot. We were, everybody says, well, everybody's got a story, but we really didn't have a lot. Thinking about growing up in the 80s and 90s, growing up without electricity and running water, nobody thinks about that kind of stuff. But my mom and dad wasn't able to help me go into some of these things. That's fine. It's not a problem. It's just I had to figure some things out for myself. And it was good for me to do so. So I kind of just drove over to Central Georgia Tech, Macon Tech at the time, and I just drove over there and I started walking. I just drove up and walked in the door and started walking through the halls. I'm trying to, how do I figure out how to go to school here? So I'm sure I looked odd when I walked in this building, right? And so I was walking around and finally some guy said, "Hey, sir, can I help you?" I says, "Yeah, how do I go to school here?" And he looks at me and says, "You need an orientation or what?" I said, "Yeah, I'm not a student. I want to see about going to school here." He said, "Yeah, you need to go up the stairs to that door, blah, blah, blah. And there's a lady at the glass window, it's orientation, see her." I said, "Okay." So I went over there and this lady, she said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "I want to go to school here." She says, "Okay, what do you want to take?" I don't know. "Do you have a list of things I can look at?" And she kind of looked at me and said, "Sure." She turns around in a chair, grabs this off the bag and slides it under the glass. And I open it up. It's trifold. I open it up and I'm going through the list. And she said, "You can go sit down over there and figure it out." I said, "No, man, this will only take a minute." And she's just looking at me and I'm going down this list, right? And my thought process is I like to work with my hands. I can do manual labor. I like tinkering. I like figuring things out. I like problem solving. And I'm thinking, what can I do that someone is willing to pay for and someone's always going to need? So I'm going through this list, this and computer, this, and automotive. I can work on cars. I've done that a little bit. I go down air conditioning. Someone always is going to need hot or cold air and willing to pay for it. I'm going to take air conditioning technology. She looked at me and says, "You're just going to pick one, huh, honey?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, air conditioning technology." So from then on, that's what I've been doing. That was all because of a woman.
That's a great story. I mean, that's I'm sure her reaction in that moment is like, he's just making a life decision
Yeah,
casually,
it was, that was it. But when you're serious about a girl, I guess when you're young, whether you know it or not, they have an influence on you, right? But I tell young people now, it's like good women are hard to find. Okay, they are really truly hard to find. I'd say a good quality godly woman is hard to find. Okay, and good men are hard to find too. I get it, but when you find one, you better hang on to her because they can sure direct you in the right, point you in the right direction. That's for sure.
And if you go off the right direction, they'll help you get back pretty fast. Too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly right. So from then on, I did air conditioning technology. I went into school and I took night classes so I got a job in a heat and air company as a helper. And so I was doing night classes and working during the day. And I did that for, going on almost, 3.5 years because it took, so I did a 2-year degree in air conditioning technology. And that's all they offered there. Which the experience meant more than that. But I had actually had one good instructor that really made it click in my head where like diagnostics and how to do some things. It just one day it just kind of clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, I understand. I figured that out, and from then on, it was very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So mainly, I told you before, I like that problem solve. I knew I liked problem solving. So part of that is diagnostics, is problem solving. It's really fun.
So you went to school, but when was there a moment you can think of where you're like, I don't want to just do this as a job. I want to own a business.
I worked in the field for years, residential, and then I went to some commercial industrial companies I worked for. One day I was working, I went to get my hair cut at the barber. Okay. And I'm sitting there getting my hair cut, and the barber looked, he says, Greg, you ever think about owning your own business? I said, nope. I do not want to own my own business ever. He says, man, you can make a good living, blah, blah, blah. Because he was a business owner. He owned his own barbershop. And he was telling me about the details of owning your own business. I said, no, I really don't. I do not want to own my own business. Absolutely not. He says, why? I said, for 2 reasons. People and people. And he says, what? I said, I've worked in the industry long enough, and I've seen there's 2 problems in business. And it's not even financial. It's people. It's either the customer side or the employee side. There's always problems because I work with all these employees, and some of these employees, they were terrible to work with, and I could see the boss man have an issue with the employees, and then they quit and leave, and I'm watching all this. I was always a very watchful person, I think, and I always paid attention to detail and just like to watch people, try to figure things out. And then, customers, I dealt with customers, while I'm working these other companies, and oh my gosh, man, it's tough, because, and I kind of hate to say this, but, some people want something for nothing. They don't want to pay for it, but they want the service, and I'm not saying all customers are like that at all. I promise you that. Some people really appreciate your work and they're willing to pay for it. Obviously, otherwise you wouldn't have a business, right?
Right.
But, I always saw that as a issue that other business owners, the people I work for, always complained and had an issue with. They always had a problem with that. So that was my answer to my barber. I was like, nope. And then several years later, things start turning. Basically what I did is, I started doing a little side work here and there. And as the side work kind of got more and more, people started calling me. They liked my demeanor. They liked my work. And I always, and I probably get this from my father, trying to be honest in all your work and having a good work ethic, finishing the job correctly, ensuring that, you do the job correctly and it's satisfactory not only to you, but also to the customer, to the homeowner, because, they want to pay for that service. They want things done correctly. So trying to provide that is key in business, that's for sure, especially when you're talking about residential. So I actually took a job. It was a commercial industrial company, and the company that I worked for at the time, they would surplus their old vans. So I bought one of their surplus vans for $600. And I said, yeah, I want to buy the van because it had high mileage. And it ran good because I drove it and they just surplused it. And I said, yeah, I'll buy it. And so I bought it. got it home, and I was like, if I do, I'll just start doing my side work in this van. That way I don't have to do it in my personal truck, and I could actually put something on there like head heating and air or something. I was thinking, and my wife was looking at me and said, yeah, that'd be cool. You could do it. You could do that,
You're over here sitting there thinking, I'm just going to do side work a
Yeah.
little more structured. And your wife is like, I see you're starting a business.
Yeah,
You just don't realize it.
That's it, and she was backing me, she didn't discourage me. She was encouraging. And then, just doing side work. And then after that, I took another job with the job I had. They liked me at that job. I took a specific job, and it was at a manufacturing plant. So I stayed in one location at that point. And it was an industrial company, and still working for a commercial industrial company. So I was a contractor in a specific manufacturing plant. And I specifically took that job just in case my personal business kind of grew. It was strictly commercial industrial, and my stuff was all residential, so there was no conflict of interest. I told my boss man what I was doing because I felt like being honest and making sure they understood what I was after and what I was doing. And I also told my customer, so if I may leave and do this, and come back, but I'm still going to give you my full 8 hours. I took that job specifically because I could go in at 6 o'clock in the morning and get off at 2 o'clock in the evening. So that left me time. So I spent 7 years doing that.
Wow.
7 years of working a lot of 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So when you get in business and you're starting your business, and I really didn't anticipate the amount of work that it was going to be, and over the years it got really busy. I started working a lot. Married at the time with 3 kids. Now I have 5 kids total nowadays, and my oldest is 22, my youngest is 10 years old. But at the time, doing my business, I think we had 3 at the time. And so it was getting a lot. I was working a lot. So when you start your business, you take on the largest risk, okay? And you have to put the most into it, okay? You got to put the time into it. One thing that I learned is if you can do the work in a week's time, everybody's going to go to work for 40 hours a week, okay? 40, 45, they might work a little overtime. You're doing the work of one person. So imagine if you did the work of 2 people for a year, 2 or 3 or 7. You're doubling your work, doubling the workload, and you can grow so much faster by doing it. But it takes a lot of sacrifice. Okay.
Yep.
Sacrifice time, sacrifice some things with the family, which is tough. Yeah. And I love family. So it got to a point where I was away from home a little too much. And I didn't like that. And so me and the wife kind of, she says, you're working a lot, I was like, yeah, I know. I got to go do this. She's planning something this evening, and I got to leave, or I'm on the phone all the time, and it's 10 o'clock. I'm still out working. 11 o'clock, midnight. I come home, sleep for 4 hours or whatever, and I'm back up going to work again. So it's tough. So there's a lot of sacrifice to starting your own business. And I started it from kind of a little bit of side work and letting it grow, and trying to create a good reputation. So I did that until it kind of took off, and I actually specifically work got so much that I kind of had a prayer. I was like, oh boy, I always pray, said, God, don't let work overtake my family life and my commitment to be a husband and a father. So it was tough where it kind of laid over, and the wife kind of said, well, you kind of gone a lot more. So I said, well, be praying about it. So that's what we did. And I did a specific prayer because I was a guaranteed paycheck, okay, making good money. And before that, actually, she was a supervisor at Geico making more money than I was. And then we made the commitment for her to be a stay-at-home mom because we were having 3 kids.
Right.
And we said, for us biblically, you get a better raising when your kids, when you have a mother raising them at home.
Right.
So that's what we wanted to do. It's just our personal preference. And during that, so I've got wife, kids at home, and I've got a guaranteed paycheck here, making X amount of dollars, good money, enough to support everything. I was like, and when she quit to be a stay-at-home mom, we got rid of every single bill. Okay, no satellite TV, nothing, no extra cell phones, no nothing, no this, no that. All we had, no car payment, paid off the vehicles, and you got rid of all the bills, and you buy what you can afford, and that's it. So all we had was a house payment, and then of course our utilities and whatever. But I had that guaranteed paycheck, and jumping from that to own your own business, that's the scariest jump you can make. And I just said, God, I can't make the decision. You're going to have to make it for me. So when we were at church, I heard a sermon that was really good. And, the sermon was, be specific in your prayers. And I said, oh, man, okay, well, let me try that. So that was a little tough. I was like, oh, man, I'm working this, I'm doing this. And it's just a lot of, strain on a man that's trying to provide for his family, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to do this specific prayer then. I told the wife to be specific in the prayer. Let's do it. Let's get this done. So I said, God, make it blatantly obvious to me which route I should take, stay with this job or go out on my own first business, because I can't make it. I'm incapable of making this decision. Make it blatantly obvious to me where that I can't make the decision. I want you to make it for me. And leave me no other path of choice. That was my specific prayer. Well, 2 weeks goes by, and I'm working my tail off, man. Summertime, it's like, springtime, right before summer, some hot weeks come in. I'm real busy. I'm like, oh, man. And so I get a call from my boss. He's in North Carolina, comes all the way down to Georgia to see me. And Greg, the plant manager, or one of the managers, says, hey, Greg, you need to go up there. I said, okay, no problem. I said, I got to finish this work here and make sure this line is working right on this airline. Nope, don't worry about it. We got it. Go ahead and up there. Your boss is here to see you. Oh, okay. So I go see him, and he's like, Greg, I think you're doing a good job. I was going over all this stuff you're doing. You're doing a great job, and I just really like the way how you're doing it, and but I'm gonna have to let you go.
Wow.
I said, what? So I had missed some hours that week, and I came in there and worked on a Saturday to make them up and make sure I got all my 40 hours in, and I actually worked the whole day without even charging for it because I'd missed that many because I left work early, so I'd come in and work 4 hours, make sure the stuff at the plant was taken care of, and then I'd leave. And then I had to make up that time that week, so I came in Saturday and worked a full 8-hour day and just didn't charge for it. And they saw it on my GPS on the vehicle of what I was doing. My boss actually called me out, and he says, yeah, I see where I told them there's a whole day you didn't even charge us for. We didn't charge them for it. I see what you're doing. I said, well, I've told them, and I've told you exactly what I was doing, right? He said, yeah, and you're right, Greg. But they just want somebody there a solid 8 hours from this time to that time, and no, they don't want you leaving the plant. I said, well, it was the manager's manager that didn't like what I was doing, and that was okay. It's no problem. But he said, Greg, they want somebody else. So I said, wow. He said, but I got another offer for you. He said, I'm going to give you this much an hour. He said, he's going to give me a big raise. And then he says, I'm going to give you a brand new truck. I'm going to pay for all your tools. I'm going to give you per diem, and we're going to pay you extra. And, this is a big company.
Yeah.
And they drive all over the Southeast from Texas to Maine. And he said, and you do good work. I know your skill set, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, Mr. Ben, I appreciate that. He says, and I want to get all this done for you. You're going to be on over the road tech, and you'll work like 3 or 4 weeks on, and you have 1 week off, and we'll go back and forth like that. And he said, what do you think about that? I says, well, that's a nice offer, Mr. Ben, but I just can't take it. He said, why not, Greg? I just don't understand. Why? This is a really good offer. You're not going to get it anywhere else. I said, you're right, Mr. Ben. You're right. but I can't take it. He says, why? I says, well, actually, it's an answered prayer. So
Right. You had the decision.
it was made for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was made for me. I took it as that, and I told him, I said, look, I got one question for you. And I've met all their technicians. They were, oh my gosh, they had probably 22, 25 techs, and I met all of them, probably except for maybe 2 or 3. And over the years working with them, and I asked him, I said, Mr. Ben, out of all your technicians that you have working like they do, how many of them are married? He says, I don't know. I said, I can tell you, Mr. Ben. I said, only one of them I met were actually married. All of them are divorced. I said, you ever think of why? I said, the reason being is because they're always away from home. And they're missing ball games. They're missing, they can't be husbands and fathers when they're a month away from home doing a job. And a man's going to do what he's got to do to make a living, to have a home, provide a roof over a family's head, right? Every solid man's going to do that, So I said, I'm not going to do that. I got 3 kids and another one on the way. I was like, I'm going to be at home every day if I can. He says, okay, I get it. It makes sense. And he said, I just don't understand. This is a good opportunity. I said, yep. No, I said, decision's already been made for me. So I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And they walked me out the door of that plant, and I never looked back. I got in my truck and, the van at times, and just drove away. And I was driving down the road, and I was like, man, okay, Lord. Well, I suspect you're going to give me some work. So
that's right.
That day I went home. I didn't have nothing to do that afternoon. I went home, saw my wife, and she says, hey, you're home early. I said, yeah, I sure am. She says, what's going on? I says, well, I got fired from my job. She said, what? I said, yep, I guess it's answered prayer. And she said, okay. Woke up the next morning, had a 8-hour full day of work. The next day, another 8 hour. Next day, another 8 hour. And every day since then, I've had it work there for me every day. So that's how I got into business.
There's a lot of times in the past that I'm sure you're the same way, that if you look to a specific situation, even if it didn't end good, it was preparing you for running your company today.
That's right.
But
usually don't see it until hindsight, but there's lots of circumstances you'll go into, and you're upset, mad about it, and it didn't work out the way you had it in your head. That customer didn't fulfill their side of it, and you knowingly did, and you did everything you could, and it still didn't work out. But and you get down the road and you're like, okay, well, I see why that worked out that way. Now I'm prepared to deal with other circumstances that come up. So there's a lot to it. But you don't ever go into God's not going to drop something in your lap and say, here you go, have at it.
Right.
He's going to make you work for it. Nothing is easy. It doesn't come easy. It's not something you just jump into and say, hey, I got a business and I'm making money. No, it's not. You have to have clientele. You have to build up reputation to sustain your livelihood. So it took me 7 years of working like that to build up a reputation and enough customer clientele to sustain my livelihood at the time.
Yeah. So. Thinking back to those early days, if you could give yourself advice now, if you could give, the old Greg, or, the younger Greg advice, what would you, if you had one piece of advice, what would it be?
Probably a couple little things is don't overbook yourself where you pull too much time away from family. There's a few things, I probably missed when I wish I hadn't. Kid stuff or, family stuff, or we didn't take a lot of vacation. Like 7 years, we didn't take any vacations. We did nothing, and we would go and do some things, but we didn't take family vacations at all ever. Because me and my wife were on the same page. She knew what I was doing. She submitted to that. She knew exactly what we wanted to do. She was on board with that. So there's some things that we probably didn't get to do when my oldest couple of boys were younger. Now, we still had fun as a family, but there's some things that probably missed, but that's part of the sacrifice. And probably the second thing, as I got down into business a little bit, there's a couple little hurdles in business. And that was when, first jump into your own company and there's no guaranteed paycheck.
Yeah.
And you got a wife and kids to provide for. And what does Scripture say about a man that can't provide for his family?
Yeah.
So you'd have to. So that's pretty tough to think of. So y'all, as a man, you're going to do whatever you got to do to provide a roof over your family's head. Absolutely, and you better do so. The other thing the one thing is learn to delegate, because all those years I had my hand on every single thing, every service call, every dollar, every circumstance, every part ordered. And as I grew, I had to hire a couple of people because I couldn't do all the installs myself. I got man, I'm getting busy. I'm blah, blah, blah. This is awesome, blah, blah, blah. So I hired a couple of guys. I said, I got to do this. Oh, I ain't never done employees before, right?
Right.
So I just jumped, and then, I got to have a guy that can do what I can do. But delegating the work to someone else is difficult because you always want to keep control, because no one will ever care about your business as much as you do. Okay. No one will ever care as much as nobody's going to put as much effort, love, and work and commitment into a business that you operate and run as much as you will. Okay. And you need to understand that in business, and you can't expect anybody to do that. Okay.
Right.
You can't, because they're not the ones taking the risk. They're not the ones that everyone has to depend on for a paycheck.
Right.
Because, there are, everybody talks, you hear business owners talk about, well, I had to pay all my employees or I can pay myself. Well, that's very true, especially when you're young and you're starting out and you got a young company. And there were some weeks where I didn't pay myself. I paid my guys. I got to make sure they're taken care of, because I don't take care of my guys and they don't get a paycheck. I got nobody to do the work, right? So you get the job done, you're paying for all the equipment, paying for all the material to get done, and then you're paying the labor, and then your payment comes. Okay? So, and you do that, 5, 6, 8 jobs a week, or even more sometimes, depending on what you got, how many workers you got. You got to pay your help before you pay yourself. So, but don't forget to pay yourself.
Right.
Okay? Because you can't sustain anything without paying yourself. So, but that's part of the sacrifice. So you delegating that work out and making sure that they're not going to do it exactly like you're going to do it. And you have to be okay with that. Because if you don't, you can't, everybody talks about micromanaging. You can't do that, obviously, but just having your hand on everything, and you're used to doing that for 7+ years. And then you have to let it go to somebody else. And they're going to do the job right. It's just not exactly like you would do it, okay? And you got to be okay with that. So you got to let that go and delegate it out.
So why do you think trade business owners have a hard time with releasing and delegating?
So everything they put their hands on, they know it's right, and they know it's done to their standard. Now you've got to let someone else do it.
So you think it's maybe a little bit of fear?
It's fear of getting it wrong and then having to deal with the repercussions of it. And when you deal with those repercussions, it costs you money and time, and then you don't have that built into your economic profile.
At what point with Head Heating and Air Conditioning did you think it could go from just maybe a business of you and maybe one other guy to a more scalable business? Was there a moment where you're like, this could be bigger than I thought it was going to be?
So, like I say, when I worked out in my home, and I built my shop, and then I had a one little office in my house. It was actually a little side room just for storage, and I turned it into my office, my computer desk, and this and that. And then I had my one technician that I hired. He would come in there, work on the computer, do parts and do things. I'm like, okay, you need to get up so I can get here. And then the shop, The guys would come in, and then I had semi trucks coming to my residential home, dropping off equipment and material. I said, if you bring anything, make sure it's on a lift gate. I got to have a lift gate because I don't have any way to get it off the truck from 5 foot off of a semi truck onto the ground, where we can load it, and so all these things came up, and I'm like, oh man, I got to do something different. So I started looking at finances, and I was like, okay, well, Lord, we got to do something, because now when I started having customers come to my house to pay their bill, I'm like, oh my gosh, don't come to my house. But then again, I'm running a business out of my house. What do you expect? Okay. So when that happened, those few things happened, I was like, I've got to do something different, because we can't continue to do this, because I got a semi truck in a residential road. It wasn't a neighborhood. It was just out in the county, backing down my little driveway that has crepe myrtles on both sides that scrape down the side of the truck every time. He don't care. He's backing down the truck, backing down the driveway, and he's fine. Great. He's easy. He's fine with it. Matter of fact, he still delivers to me this day. He's, I remember when you were at your house, Greg, and I was delivering to you, but I sure could back that truck down that driveway. I said, yes, sir, you sure did. He still delivers to me to this day. It's great. So
I love that.
Working those relationships is always nice. But yeah, when I was working out of my home, and these things were just getting so cumbersome. It was difficult to operate. I finally built a building and had a groundbreaking. I was like, wow, this is scary again, man. This is a big step.
Right.
So, the step from jumping into from a guaranteed paycheck and a non-guaranteed paycheck to now I'm jumping into a building that I'm creating debt in my company. And that's one of the things else you have to learn is not all debt is bad. Some debt is called investment. Okay. So you have to start differentiating that when you get into business and growing a business too. Now, I grew my business. I did my business quite a bit differently than some people. You can take out big loans, you can do this and that and start her up and hope that the clientele starts calling and start advertising and just doing a lot of different things like that. I didn't do it that way. I did it more on a conservative side where I let word of mouth talk. I let my work ethic talk for me. I let repeat business happen, and it did good. It takes longer to do it that way, but it's more secure doing it that way. So it's less risk.
Yeah.
Financial risk, that is.
What have you learned about hiring and keeping good technicians? And I guess those are two questions, two separate things, but
hiring qualified people with experience is difficult in the trade industry. One of the main reasons is not a whole lot of people going into it. When I was going to school, maybe when you were going to school, what were you told to do in the pursuit of success?
Go to college and get a good job at a good company.
Right. Go to college,
Mm-hmm.
go work at a Fortune 500 company or some big company and have a cubicle and work on a computer somewhere.
Right.
That's what we've been feeding our kids for the past 30 plus years. Okay.
Yep.
And I can tell you that's the detriment that our public education is, not just our public education, but parents have told our kids. Because if parents say, I want my kid to do better than I did, right? Let me tell you something. If your kid wants to be a ditch digger, let them do it and let them be the best at it.
Amen.
Okay? And let him make a living at it. If he's the best at it, he will do well. Okay? You got a crane operator. Oh, I'm going to operate a crane. Let me tell you something. Lots of those crane operators, heavy equipment operators, make well over six figures. Okay? Now, six figures ain't as much as it used to be now. Okay? I get it. But they make well over that nowadays. So the hiring is tough, been very tough in the past 10 years, 10 plus years, because there's not a lot of people in the industry with the experience. That's been one of my big hurdles is that. So what I'm doing is I've done several things as far as hiring goes, because there's not a lot of people experience. So I'm trying to raise them up, bring them in green and train them. The tough part in business is you spend the money on them and then they leave and go somewhere else. You're just going to have to accept that and understand that. In my mind, at least I got somebody in the industry that's going to hopefully get in and stay, even if they're not staying with me. So I'm just good. I'm glad somebody's getting into the industry. So that's one of the reasons I've got with the local school system. And I ran for school board, and that was one of my angles. Maybe I didn't tell everybody that, but it's a resource for me to go into the schools. And I went into construction class and I developed a good relationship with a construction teacher, automotive teacher. Went in there and just gave my spiel once a year. I said, hey, if y'all looking at this, hey, come see me. Work-based learning is in our local schools, so I'm snatching a few guys out of that. I've had one working with me this past semester, and matter of fact, past I've done signings for these young men. Schools hadn't always supported it. I did my own signing from this table. I buy them $1,000 worth of tools. They sign me a 2-year contract. Those tools are yours after 2 years, or if you quit before then, you have to return them or pay for what you don't have. That's the contract.
Yeah.
Simple contract.
I love that.
But I had one boy, he come in and his mama, his grandma, and everybody was there and signed in front of the bed. I had a table with a tablecloth and everything set up, local paper, had it all in front page news, and it was great. I've done that several times actually, and some have stayed, some have gone. Matter of fact, I'm doing another one here pretty soon, May 19th, and this time the school's backing me up now. I'm a little different position in the school system too now, but I've got some really good people at the school system that are starting to back that thought process. So hiring people has been a struggle based on not a lot of experience, because all the people with experience already have the job and the pay scale. What I have found, and this may sound bad to say, but I say it's the truth, is in order to keep some of the help that I have, may not. I think this is crying across the board. You have to overpay the individual. You have to pay them more than what they're worth in the job that they're in, even the skill set they're in, just to keep them on, so you can invest in them and get that skill set to where you need it to be. So you may have to overpay them, and you've got to understand that and realize that. So it's more an investment into the person and the individual to try to get them where they can improve their skill set, where they can be profitable. Several years ago, I was actually on a CTAE program where I was in, like I say, I'm elected to the school board, and me and the CTA teacher went to a seminar that I'm making. Brian Kemp's governor, his group he wasn't there, but his workforce development people were there. And there was tech schools. This room had probably 150 people in it, of school leaders, school superintendents, CTA directors, and all this. And I'm sitting there, it's just me and her, and I'm sitting there listening. Everybody's like, hey, our school's doing this. And there's 5 different tech schools there promoting themselves, obviously, and telling how successful they are about producing young people out in the trades. I'm sitting there listening to all of it, and I'm like, oh, my goodness, because I hadn't had any good experience with them. It's terrible. So I looked over at my CTA director, and she looks at me and grins. I said, because everybody's standing up saying who they are and giving their spiel, how great our tech school is doing this, we're doing this, and we're turning out this many people with diplomas and degrees and blah, 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 and electrician, blah, 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 and this and that. I'm listening to it, and like, oh my gosh. And that's the tech school. I interviewed 3 different people from these 3 different tech schools, and I didn't hire not any 3 of those individuals. My reasoning was, one of them, I have a trainer in my shop. I built a trainer. It's on wheels, and it's a condenser and an air handler all piped together, thermostat here. I mean, it's just like what's in your house. Turn it on, and I put a bug in it, and they have to figure it out.
That's cool.
Okay?
I like that.
So that's part of their interview process. Because if they tell me they're a technician and they have 3 years of experience, then you should know how to diagnose some simple things, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people will. It's not that they'll lie about it, but I think they think they know more than what they really do, and they don't know the basics.
Yeah.
So I had this guy. He came in, and I says, "All right, well, open this unit." He's like, scratching his hand, checking this, checking that. He's checking this. I'm like, and I know where I put the bug. He's checking this unit when he should be checking this unit because of what I've described. I said, "I'm the customer. Knock on the door. Hey, I'm so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Yeah. Well, problem is this. Just like I come to your home and you tell me, say, yeah, nothing. It's just not cooling at all. I don't know. No air's coming out of my vents. Okay. If no air's coming out of your vents, I don't need to go to your outdoor unit. I need to go to your indoor unit. Okay. Or at least go to the breaker and check that first. Certain things, watching this guy, and I said, okay. So I'll go out there and help him. I said, okay, it's this and this and this. And I show him. He said, oh, okay, all right. I said, what is this component right here? He said, that's the capacitor. I said, no, sir, no, that's not the capacitor. I said, that's the transformer. So he couldn't even identify basic parts.
Yeah.
And he just received a 2-year degree out of this air conditioning technical college.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my tough part. So in this seminar or in this meeting, and I had 3 people from 3 different tech schools. I couldn't hire any 3 of them. So I got up and I talked to them. I said, hey, they asked me, what's your house? Greg Head. I'm so-and-so, so-and-so. I gave everybody giving their credentials. So I'm Monroe County School Board, Development Authority, blah, blah, blah. And, I want to talk to everyone as a business owner right now. I'm owner of Head Heating and Air Conditioning. And I want y'all to know that I hear everything you're saying, and it sounds great. It's awesome. And I'm really happy that y'all are pushing this, and it's needed. I said, but I want to tell you, I interviewed 3 people that you have given completion degrees, a degree or a completion certificate in this air conditioning technology field. And one's from this college. I named the 3 colleges, and they were there. And they're like, oh, yeah. I said, I want to tell you something. I couldn't hire any one of them. I said, you have given these people diplomas, completion certificates, and I want to know as a business owner, what have you taught these young people
for 2 years?
For 2 years, and you've given them a degree. Tell me, what am I supposed to expect out of somebody that has a 2-year degree and a completion certificate in air conditioning technology? Because what you just provided me in this past year, I couldn't hire. And they all looked at me. It's like, oh, someone is saying opposite of what everybody else is saying. How dare you? I'm like, right. No. And I said, I'm not talking bad about your colleges. I am not. I want y'all to understand that. And please take it as constructive criticism. And I was trying to be nice as I could about it. And my wife gets on to me sometimes about having pointed words, So, that woman thing is always good to bring you down, right, to the level you're supposed to be. But she wasn't there. So that day. So, but, I told her, I said, what am I truly expect? Because I'm going to tell you what I expect as a business owner from someone that has a 2-year degree in air conditioning technology is for me to put them in a van and go make me money. Mm-hmm. If they can't do that, what am I paying them for? Okay. And you say, oh, it's not all about money. Well, when you're running a business, you have a margin. You have to make those margins. If you don't, you can't pay your employees. You can't pay yourself. You don't have a business if you can't make your margins, right?
Right.
Okay. So when you hire somebody, they got to be able to produce. Either that or you got to invest in them to get them where you can get them to produce.
Right.
Okay. So, and they looked at me. I got, well, thank you for the feedback. I said, sure. Sat down. 2 weeks goes by. I get a call from the governor's workforce. They're coming down to see a few businesses, and I was on their list. So they came down and sat with me and said, we got about 30 minutes. We'd like to talk to you. We heard we need to talk to you. I said, oh, really? They heard what I said there. So the governor always sent them down there and talked to me. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to you. And at the time, this is funny. And I said, they asked me about my workers and, who I have and their experience and this and that. I said, I'll tell you something. I've hired 4 right now I've got 3 people working for me, and they're young people, graduated high school, and they're great. They're 3 of my best workers I got. Oh, really? Wow, really? Yeah. I said, yeah, actually. I said, but they have something in common. They said, really? What is it? What is it? I said, they're all homeschooled. They looked at me and said, really? I said, yeah, that's right.
That's a pretty interesting, I could see how 1 or 2 of them, but
I had 4 of them, 4 young people that I hired. All 4 of them were really good. And I say 3 because they were currently working for me at that time. All 4 of these young people, they were some of my best employees, and what they had in common was they were all homeschooled. Every one of them. They were the best. They worked the hardest. They were the most. Now I've got some young people that aren't homeschooled, and they're great guys. Now I'm not saying that if you're not homeschooled, you're not a good worker. That's not what I'm saying. At the time, I was bringing in a lot of young people, bringing them in working. And over the past, I've been brought in and they quit and leave. They can't do the work, or they don't want to do the work. But it was odd that those homeschool young people were some of my hardest workers because they had guidance. They were pressured, that they were pushed to complete a task.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to public school, what have we always been told to be successful? Go to college, go to college, go to college. Let me tell you something. That is not the only path to success. We have been fed a line that has been so untrue for so many years, so many decades, that the path to success is college, 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 college.
Right.
And that's not the truth. So, to change that narrative is very difficult. And it's very difficult to change it in a parent's mind because they look at success as going to college.
Right. I was going to say you're fighting an uphill battle because they've been fed this by trusted, figures in their life, their parents, grandparents,
absolutely,
aunts, uncles, teachers, so everybody around them has told them college is your path.
Right.
And I like to always refer to it as, the times have changed, but the advice hasn't.
Yeah.
And I'm about the most anti-college person that's out there. But I always say, very similar to your advice, I always say, if what you want to do requires college, do it.
Mm-hmm.
But
absolutely,
if it doesn't require college, you need to think real hard about whether it makes sense, because everybody you talk to will tell you, well, if you're going into IT, you need to go to a computer science or something. Yeah. Biggest waste of money ever.
Right. And that's one of the issues is, even in school now, even in K through 12, a lot of the curriculum, examples, and work is done strictly online with pictures and videos, and there's no real world application.
Yes.
So I can tell you, when I was in school, heating and air conditioning, there's geometry. It uses a lot of geometry and a lot of physics. Okay. And as I got into it, and I took geometry and physics in high school. I didn't pay attention. I'm looking at it and saying, I'm not going to use this crap. I'm never going to use this for anything in the real world. Kids, they all say that. If I had somebody that was to come in and show me where that applied in real world application, I would have paid attention more.
That's a good point.
Okay. Because I'm sitting back now, and I've told teachers, call me when you go over the laws of heat transfer. I'd love to be there. That's what air conditioning does. I'll bring in a little model. I'll plug it up. I'll show them. I said, do you realize that refrigerant goes through a system, blah, 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 and the fan releases heat absorption goes into the refrigerant through through the air passing through the coil. Heat goes into this refrigerant, boils off. When it boils off, it absorbs heat, and it gets compressed and goes through this coil and gets released outside where it's not objectionable. That's one of the laws of heat transfer. Heat cannot be destroyed. It can only be moved from one place to another. I mean, that's physics.
And I would even argue that even if just teaching it in that way would make students pay more attention.
It would.
Even if they're not going to go into heating and air conditioning.
And then when they're, exactly, but they know that, hey, it does apply to something in the real world that, hey, I got an air conditioning unit in my house.
Right.
So that's how it works. You don't actually blow cold air. You're blowing air absent of heat. It's like, wait a minute, think about that. But it's the key is to create thought in the young mind, right? And teachers, I'm not saying all teachers, some curriculum and teachers aren't doing that because it's easy just to put it on a computer and it's already laid out for them from a curriculum that somebody's created and say, here you go, click, 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 and they're just doing it.
Right.
And I'm gonna tell you, everything that is learned K through 12, and I would dare to say K through college, everything that you're learning is available online.
Oh yeah.
Nothing is not. Everything is there, and if you have the self-discipline, you can learn all that yourself without school.
Yeah. I would even say that the level of education is much higher too in certain cases, where, like same thing. My daughter she's like, oh, we're doing labs, and I said, okay, let me see what kind of labs you're doing. And it was simulators and stuff, and I'm like, I mean, I got on eBay and I was like, we're going to buy you some equipment.
There you go.
Cause I'm like, you got to have your hands on this stuff. And, and not only that, but I think having your hands on something, it eliminates the friction to get to learning, cause it's like, there's friction. It's like, I got to log in. Oh, I got to start the lab. I got to figure, it's like, it becomes such an abstract concept where you're just like, oh, even when she tried to explain it to me, she'd be like, well, I'm logged into the thing with the lab.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but what are you actually doing right here? And, it's like, if it's a physical, you could put your finger on it and be like, this is what I'm doing right here. Yep. I'm messing with this,
You got to create, if you're going to teach anything, even as a parent, you got to create constructive thought processes.
If somebody's in Middle Georgia, they need some help with heating and air conditioning, why would they choose Head?
Absolutely. I mean, they're going to choose heating and air because, we're going to stand behind our work. We're going to make sure things are done properly. And of course, everybody says that, but I'm going to treat our customers as if I'm going to be in my own home doing my work. So I'm very specific and want things done right. I don't want it done right the first time. So, that's what you're going to get when you call us. And we understand that people are on a budget. Things are expensive. And one thing that I guarantee I always do for my customers is I'm going to give you the options. Just today we had a service call. Customer called us and say, look, I have had 3 companies come out. They all come out and check my unit, and they got to say I got to replace it. And it's going to be X amount of dollars. Well, I'll tell you, the cheapest company said like a little over $10,000 to put a new system in. The other one was $12,000. The other one was $16,000, whatever it was. And they call us, well, we need you to come out and give us a quote. I said, sure, we can. Absolutely. And actually, they had called the office, and my guy, technician, I said, I want you to call me when you get out there because new customer. Let me know what you find. He told me what they found. He says, well, actually, it's a wire that arced and burned a hole in one of these copper capillary tubes in the outdoor unit, so all the refrigerant's lost. So, oh man, that sucks. Yeah, that's a tough one. But when that happens, and I tell my guys, we always give options to our customers, and that's why people should call us, because we're going to give the option. You can repair it. Now, will we recommend not repairing it and replacement? Yes, we're going to give you a recommendation also. But at this unit, it was I think it was a little over 10 years old. Life expectancy is 10 to 15 on a system. So I'll tell them, we can repair it for you. Really? How much is that? Gave them a price, and got to put all the refrigerant back in it. It is expensive. Refrigerant is expensive, about $100 a pound. So instead of replacing their system for $10,000 to $16,000, we repaired it and got it working for about $1,200. And I gave them the option. They said, yeah, I want to do that. How much longer would you think it would run? It'd probably run several more years. I mean, shouldn't be a problem. I mean, we can fix it. Now, you can replace it. I'll give you a price if you like it. And I told them what our price was, and it was cheaper. But, of course, they told us what the cost was after they decided to do the repair. And they didn't shop the price out, which was I'm very thankful that customer didn't tell us prices before. I like that better. But we gave them a price on repair, and that's what they chose to do, and they were very happy with it. And they said, we're going to use you guys from now on. I said, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. and always want to give you the option. So why people should call us is we're always going to be honest, and we're going to try to give our customers options because, finances are tough. Things are a lot more expensive nowadays. And yes, would I like to change out every system that has a minor problem? Sure, yeah, because profit margins are higher. But that's not what homeowners want. You want to take care of your customers. You want to take care of the people that are depending on you. So, if it can be repaired, I'm going to give you the price to repair it, and I'll give you the recommendation that goes along with that. So that's why people should call us, because we're going to not only be honest, but we're going to give you options, not just to replace systems. We're going to give you an option of repair.
When it comes to heating and air conditioning in a customer's home on the residential side, what do you think the most overlooked thing is in the home that customers or clients just don't ever think about, that if you went into their house, you'd be like, oh, this is a problem every house I go to?
Well, two little things, I guess. Filter, air filter. Nobody thinks about the filter. The husbands, the men of the house always get too busy. The wife is always busy with the kids and stuff and dinner and everything else. So they really forget about the filter. We've gone to many houses where, it's just your unit's iced up. We don't have any airflow, and it's a block of ice. We got to de-ice it. It's all because of a dirty filter. That's one of the obvious things. I think the second obvious thing is batteries in a thermostat.
Wow.
A lot of people say, man, it's acting funny. Sometimes it's working and sometimes not. And we get over there and there's a battery indicator on the display and it's dead. And it's enough to keep the display open, but when you touch it, it kind of glitches a little bit. We notice, I see it, but most homeowners say, oh, yes, that's not working. And the little door on the top, or if you have to pull the cover off and on the back, there's batteries inside of it. People always forget about the batteries inside of a thermostat.
That's a good one. Yeah. I did not see
batteries in a thermostat. Wow. I hate. It's difficult for us to go out to a service call and charge for a service call, and it's just changing out the batteries. I was like, oh, and it's like, well, okay, well, thank you very much. And I was like, well, and I tell my guys, when you find that, just stop, get it taken care of, and just service the unit too. Just go ahead and service the whole system. So at least we can service the system, not just change out batteries and run.
Right.
So, if it's something simple like that, even the filter, I tell my guys, don't just do that and charge $85 and leave. Go ahead and tell them, hey, well, it was just this, but I'm going to go ahead and service the unit too. Okay. Really? Okay. Thank you. Absolutely. Why not? We're there. Do it.
I like that. I would say I would make you feel better too, is that I had this was recently, we had a leak in our roof, where our chimney is.
Yeah.
And I called, I thought it was water because I saw water on our drywall in the ceiling, right? Mm-hmm. So I called a plumber. They come out there, cut a huge hole. They're like, no, there was no water lines in there. So they just leave. So I'm like,
now you got a hole in your ceiling that you got to deal with.
Well, so then I thought, I'm still thinking, where's the leak? Yeah. So then I thought, there's I don't know much about HVAC, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a part of the HVAC component. I'm like, maybe it's sweating or something. Mm-hmm. So then I thought, okay, let's call. Someone came out, they looked at it and they go, no, it's not the HVAC. And I'm like, what do I do?
The next question, ask the guy, what do you think it is? Can you help me out with that?
Well, yeah, I think one of them said, maybe it's coming from the roof. And I went, I don't know. And then it hit me. I'm like, well, the chimney is right here.
Yeah, you got a flash in there.
And then I thought, we had a chimney inspection not that long ago. It was like a year ago. But so I said, let me contact the chimney company, see if they notice anything. They reply back. They're like, sir, as we put on our report on page 42, we noted that, you possibly had a water leak. And I'm like, that's not something you just leave on page 42. You got to say, sir, you got to know. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, we had a leak in our roof, and I called out a roofer, and he came out, and he was out probably 20, 30 minutes, if that.
Took care of it.
Yeah, and he actually was funny because he comes to the door and he's like, sir, I know this is weird, but what size shoe do you wear? And I went, like an 11. He goes, do you have a pair of shoes I could borrow? Because if not, I got to run back to wherever, and it's going to be like 45 minutes or something. And he just started a company, and which, by the way, great guy. He's doing a great job. But so I was like,
he ride with no shoes on, or what?
No, he had shoes, but I guess because we got metal roof.
Okay,
So, so he was not. He was probably planning to be shingle or something.
Yeah, some of those roofs, if you don't have the right shoe on metal roof, they just slide.
Yeah.
So you have to have something that grips. Yeah,
Right,
that's
yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I'm like, what size shoe do I wear? And
So let me borrow your shoes.
Yeah, so
I'll
I
give you a
ended
good discount.
right. So I ended up letting him borrow the shoes. He was up there maybe 20 minutes, fixed our problem. The leak went away, and he said and I could tell he's a brand new business owner because he says, "How does $300 sound?"
Yeah,
and I'm like,
sounds
I'm
good.
like, first of all, you just tell me what the price is. Don't ask, because I'll agree to it, but don't. Other people are gonna go, I don't know,
Yeah.
And I think he felt a little guilty because he's like, I was only there 20 minutes,
Had to borrow his shoes.
right? And I said, but you didn't, because even my wife said, well, is 300 fair for what he did? And I said, if you just evaluate it based on what he actually did, and if you charge by the hour, then yeah, that's 300's crazy. He was there for 20 minutes. I said, but the reality is I didn't pay for him to go up, get on a ladder. I paid for the knowledge of what to do when he found it, right?
Exactly.
Because I didn't have that knowledge.
If you had the knowledge, you would have done it, hadn't you?
Right. Yeah. So to me, 300 solved a big problem.
That's right.
Potential mold issues, all this.
It was worth it.
Right. So, I mean, I felt great about paying that.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes to the old adage of the old shipmaster mechanic. There's a big, huge naval ship, and they had to get a mechanic, and they said the whole engine is down on this ship, blah, blah, blah. And he says, they called everybody. Nobody could fix it, right? And this and that. And one of the guys said, I know one guy. He's really good. He's an old guy. He knows his stuff about these marine engines. Okay, call him up. So he goes out there, old man with a little tool bag, walks in. Everybody's looking at him. It's like, this guy. He walks in there, walks around the thing, takes his screwdriver, sticks it to his ear, sticks it on the motor, turns it, goes over here and does the same thing. Everybody's looking at him like, this guy's a crackpot. Takes his ball peen hammer, whacks on this thing, starts it up, comes on run, puts his bag up, hands him a $5,000 bill. And they said, I'm not paying this. What am I paying for? You came in here for 15 minutes and you beat on it. And I'm going to have you itemize this bill. He said, okay. Took it from me, wrote on it. I said, $20 ball peen hammer. Another $10 for the flat-headed screwdriver. And $4,900 was it?
Yeah.
$70 for
knowing
where to beat on the engine for the ball peen hammer. It's like, yeah, you're paying for knowledge. It's just like any trade. I had a customer one day. I went out to his house, and he said, my air conditioner's not working. I said, yes, sir. I get over there and I started checking it, opened it up. He goes in his house. I had to go back and knock on his door, and I said, I need to get underneath your house. He says, I asked, your air handlers are underneath the house because I didn't get to go. It was a little odd. He didn't want me to come in the house. It was fine. No big deal. I said, I need to, your air handlers are underneath the house. Your vents coming out of your floor. He said, yeah. I said, well, I need to get underneath the house. He said, well, you don't need to go under my house. My air conditioner's not working. It's right here. I said, yes, sir. I understand that. I said, I got it. So he closed the door. I walked back. I crawled under his house, checking voltage. And had voltage, but the voltage wasn't coming from the thermostat to the outdoor unit now. So I had to check it out there. Go crawl back out and go knock on the door again. I said, sir, I need to come into the thermostat. He got a little ill and he said, sir? He said, well, why do you need to come to my thermostat? I told you the air conditioning unit right there is right there. The problem is my air conditioner is not running. And I was like, sir, and he is really, really rude. I was like a little ill. That's when I was a little younger. And I set my tools down. I said, sir, there's my tools. You can go fix it. He looked at me and said, that's not what I said. I said, I just don't understand why you need to come into my house and look at my thermostat. I said, okay, sir, you're paying me to come and fix your air conditioning unit. I checked your outdoor unit. There's no control voltage to your outdoor unit. I asked you to come inside, asked you about your air handler. And I went underneath. Your air handler's underneath the house. I checked the voltage there, and it is there. The next place it goes is your thermostat before it goes to your outdoor unit. I said, so I need to go to your thermostat to find out why the voltage isn't coming out of your thermostat to your outdoor unit. Well, I didn't know that. So I said, but that's why you called me here, but you don't want me. Is there a reason why you don't want me in the house? I mean, I'll just, my shoes aren't dirty. I'll take my shoes off. No, I just didn't understand why you need to come in my house. Well, okay, come on in. Yeah. Got it fixed. Thermostat. He was happy after I left because I fixed it, but it was just, you get all kinds, it's okay, but I fixed it. He was happy afterwards and it's fine. But, just knowing you're not only paying for someone to come out and do a service for you or fix your chimney or fix this or do this, a mechanic on your car, you're paying for the knowledge to know how to get it done too. Mm-hmm. So it's not just for the mechanics, it's for the knowledge, right? So, and the experience.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm good on questions. I know we went a little long, but
that's fine.
Appreciate you.
I don't even know what time it is. It's great.
I just wanted to be respectful of your time, but I appreciate it.
No, it's good.
It's been great. So
yeah, enjoyed it quite a bit. So